take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the continent to bring you the truth about cannabis and marijuana law reform.
I smoke pot and I like it a lot.
The Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation. Now, here's your host, Radical Russ Belville.
Good day, tokers and tokettes, and welcome to the show. It is Friday, June 13th, 2014, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. Welcome back. We're so glad we made it to the weekend, and we're really glad to have you here listening to us. We are listener-supported Cannabis Community Radio, and you can help keep us on the internet, live and direct, free for everyone who wishes to hear it, by becoming a VIP sponsor. Just go to 420radio.org and look for the VIP membership button at the top. Your support keeps us going. On today's show, we've got plenty of stuff. We're going to wrap up our coverage of the Dallas-Fort Worth Normal Texas Regional Normal Conference that took place last weekend. On today's show, we get a little look at legalization law and order with a great presentation by attorney Chad West, teaching you everything you need to know about search and seizure law. This is really important stuff. You want to stay tuned for that. Learn how to keep yourself out of jail. Also, we've got a little bit from David Sloan, the longtime supporter of DFW Normal, the man behind the 420 Truth Enforcement car, and a short little speech where he comes out of the closet, the cannabis closet, that is. We'll talk about that on the show in the Radical Rant segment. Also on today's show, we'll have time to go behind the headlines where the Centers for Disease Control have released the latest youth risk behavior survey. And you know how they always say, what about the children? We can't legalize marijuana because of the message that it would send to the children. Well, it looks like that message has been received and the data bear it out. Teen pot smoking did not go up in the past decade. We'll talk about that and get behind all of the numbers in Behind the Headlines. But first, we'll be turning over to our 420 radio news where our own Priscilla Seiben will be standing by. We seem to be having some connection difficulties, but can you hear us okay, Priscilla?
10-4, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine. We'll work on the video during the break. It's not that important. We are a radio show after all, but we do love to see your smiling face. And by the way, Priscilla, great work these past couple of weeks getting up and going. We kind of threw you into the water and forced you to have to swim, and you're swimming just fine.
That's right. Yeah. Adapt well. Thank you, though.
All right. So coming up in the headlines today, we're going to talk about legalization in Oregon. More money coming to the legalization campaign in Oregon. Also, polls are looking good here in Oregon for the passage of marijuana legalization. We got more money coming into Alaska for its legalization initiative. That's it's initiative number 2 on their ballot. We're going to take a look at the Caribbean country of Jamaica, which is announcing major decriminalization. San Jose, California is going the other direction and restricting medical marijuana dispensaries. Washington, D.C. City Council is looking to open up medical marijuana and legalize recreational marijuana. And Governor Andrew Cuomo in New York is getting cold feet about medical marijuana in his state. We'll talk all about that, and we'll take your calls in hour 2 at 971-533-7111 in our Toker Talk radio segment, where you can become a part of the marijuana, a voice in the marijuana nation. Also, we got some music for our Daily Toker tunes for Rockin' Friday in hour 2 for our 420 break. Some great music from Whoa Fat and some news from the Herb Thrasher Flower Hour about that fine group. So all of that's coming up later on the Russ Belville Show. 2 hours every weekday here at 420radio.org, live from Rolla J Studios in beautiful Potland, Oregon. Catch us every day from 3 to 5 Pacific time with replays at 6 and 9. The news is next. We'll be right back.
You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
420 Radio, turning red states and blue states green. The Marijuana Business Association, or MJBA, are proud sponsors of the Russ Belville Show. It is the mission of the MJBA to establish integrity and legitimacy, create common market standards, provide market intelligence, and develop best ethical business practices for participants in the emerging legal marijuana industry, including commercial hemp, medical marijuana, and recreational marijuana for adults. Learn more about the Marijuana Business Association and visit mjba.net to join today. That's mjba.net. 420radio.org is proud to replay Professionals Against Prohibition with Jen Jackson from Raleigh, North Carolina. Meet today's most interesting activists in drug law reform and find out what creative means are being used to heighten public awareness of the need for drug law reform. Catch the replays Thursday at 10 Pacific on 420radio.org. The law offices of Omar Figueroa would like to remind you to stand up for your rights. If you are detained or arrested, treat law enforcement with respect and stand up for your rights by repeating, "I respectfully invoke all of my legal and constitutional rights. I do not consent to any search and seizure. I want to remain silent, and I want to speak with my attorney." Please contact the law offices of Omar Figueroa at 415-489-0420 or 707-829-0215 or on the web at omarfigueroa.com. It's time for the 420 Radio News, covering the latest headlines in consumer cannabis, medical marijuana, and industrial hemp. Transcripts of 420 Radio News are available daily on our website at 420radio.org. Now, here's Priscilla Simon.
All right, here's your 420 Radio News for Friday, June 13th, 2014. Legalization in Oregon got a huge boost today when it was revealed a new $250,000 donation to the New Approach Oregon campaign. A political action committee formed by the brother, sons, and ex-wife of the late billionaire Peter Lewis made the donation, adding to the $96,000 Mr. Lewis donated before his death last November. Committee members also include Perfume Heir Henry Van Ameringen, who had already given $100,000, adult mail-order businessman Phil Harvey, who's donated $50,000 previously, Carrie Tuna, the wife of Facebook's co-founder Dustin Moskovitz, and David Bronner of Dr. Bronner Soaps. New Approach Oregon has also received another $150,000 from Drug Policy Action, the founding arm of Ethan Nadelman's Drug Policy Alliance, adding to a previous $200,000 donation. In all, New Approach Oregon has raised over $900,000 for the campaign, which has until July 3rd to turn in over 87,000 valid signatures.
This is great news, and I spoke with Anthony Johnson from New Approach Oregon last week, and he said they have over 60,000 signatures ready to go. I believe there will be a turn-in coming in soon where we'll get an official number, and I have a really good feeling about our signature gathering. With this much money coming into the campaign, almost $1 million, it really cures the problem we had in the campaigns in 2012, which was it got on the ballot, but then after that, we didn't have any money left to campaign for it. My hope here is that this is enough money to not only get on the ballot, but also to buy up some TV ad time, some radio ad time, get us some billboards around the state, and convince Oregonians that we need to join Colorado and Washington in the legalization and regulation of marijuana markets.
Yeah, right on. Speaking of Oregon, a new Survey USA poll shows legalization barely topping majority support. 51% of Oregon voters are in favor of legalization, with 41% opposed and 8% undecided. The poll did not ask specifically about the New Approach Oregon or OCTA/hemp initiatives, merely whether voters support allowing adults to possess and grow marijuana and allowing the state to tax and regulate marijuana. Support was greatest among voters under 35 at 70% and between ages 50 and 64 at 57%. Democrat and Republican support were mirror images, where 65% of voters of Democrats support and 67% of Republicans oppose legalization. But support wasn't just buoyed by liberal urban voters. 51% of Portlanders and 50% of non-Portlanders support legalization.
Yeah, this poll, I think, is a little low on the support, and possibly because when you're asking a generic legalization question, Oregonians are a little bit better educated on this. There's been a lot of strong activism in this state for year after year after year, so they really want to know what the details are. I think if it had been clear we were talking about taxed and regulated, well-regulated marijuana systems, I think it would have scored a little bit higher. As far as the age demographics, not too surprising that voters under 35 have such great support. We do see that kind of saddle of support that we talk about in the Middle Ages, right? So like from age 35 to 49, that age when, adults have their kids and they're raising them,
understandable.
It drops to like 50% at that point. And then it goes back up to 57% after age 50, after the kids skedaddle to college or whatever. Mom and dad are like, hey, let's light up a joint or something. I think that's what's going on. Hey, Priscilla, out there in Colorado, now that there's been legalization going on for, almost half a year there, are you seeing that the folks that shop at the pot shops tend to be like an older demographic?
You know what? It's funny you ask, because I do see where that kind of saddle goes. I see kind of a younger demographic in there in their late 20s and 30s, early 30s, and then a huge gap where you see kind of like parents in there, or older parents, kind of baby boomers who are retired and whatnot. There is a significant gap. I see like a cotton tops up in the dispensaries, mixed in with some middle-aged kids.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's go on.
More news about money for legalization. The campaign to legalize in Alaska just received a $140,000 donation from the Marijuana Policy Project. This donation pushes the campaign over the $500,000 mark and dwarfs the money raised by the opposition. The group fighting legalization, Big Marijuana, Big Mistake, Vote No on number 2, has raised only $31,000 since April.
Yeah, and this is something that they always like to play victim of. Oh my God, we're so outspent. We're so outspent by the big marijuana billionaires. Poor us, we're the underdogs. Don't buy that for a second. Just because Big Marijuana, Big Mistakes only gotten $31,000, it doesn't mean it also doesn't have the support of the sheriffs and the cops and the rehabs and the federal government and all the anti-drug people whose money doesn't directly get put into the no campaign, but whose voices, whose actions, whose standing and authority lend more to that campaign than money could possibly do to them. We are the underdogs in these campaigns, and it is kind of nice, though, that we're starting to have a few of our own billionaires to support us.
And the next time you rock down to Electric Avenue, taking you higher will only be a fine. The government of Jamaica announced Thursday they will be decriminalizing the personal possession of 2 ounces of marijuana, known in the Caribbean island as ganja. The Prime Minister, Portia Simpson Miller, decided early this month that ganja use for personal, medical, and religious purposes shall only be a ticketable offense. Minister of Justice Mark Golding noted that the Parliament will make the formal changes this summer, as well as proposing a bill to expunge the criminal records of people convicted for personal amounts of ganja.
I know probably a lot of our listeners in America are going, wait, it's illegal in Jamaica? Yes, folks, it is illegal in Jamaica. There's a reason that Sheriff John Brown got shot, right? It is illegal, but I mean, it's kind of tolerated amongst the Rastas, and as long as someone's not being real crazy about it. I've got friends that visit Jamaica every year. They say as long as people aren't being real crazy and open about it, it's not really been a problem. It almost sounds as if they're just trying to get the law to catch up with what the people are already doing there. But wow, 2 ounces is further than any American state goes in decriminalization or legalization, except for Ohio, which allows a little over 3 ounces of decriminalization. Good work, Jamaica. Can't wait to visit.
Yeah. Medical marijuana dispensaries in San Jose have been regulated to just 1% of available city business space. The tight new regulations, adopted in a 7-3 city council vote Tuesday, will require the vast majority of the city's 80 dispensaries to close within a year. Under the new rules, dispensaries must be 1,000 feet from schools, parks, areas where children gather, and major business parks, 500 feet from drug rehabs, and 150 feet away from homes. Maybe 5 or 10 current dispensaries could meet all those requirements. Store hours are also limited, round-the-clock security is required, on-site consumption is banned, and no candy medibles are allowed.
All right, so I've placed a map up on our web screen for those of you watching the replay or watching live, and that is the map of where you can have a dispensary now in San Jose. Those red spots, those little flecks of red that look like someone maybe cut themselves shaving as they're making the map, right? That's it. That's the only places in San Jose where you're going to be allowed to operate a medical marijuana dispensary. Now, you see all those places in white, those are the incorporated areas of San Jose, and all those places in yellow are the unincorporated areas of Santa Clara County. Another way to look at it is the places in white and in yellow are all the places where you're allowed to open up a liquor store, a bar, a tobacco shop, a cigar store, or a CVS pharmacy.
The Washington, D.C. City Council has unanimously pledged to open the district's medical marijuana program to any patient. On Thursday, the City Council's 13 members agreed to support a bill that would remove D.C.'s qualifying condition list, which only includes HIV and AIDS, cancer, glaucoma, and muscle spasms, and replace it with language allowing doctors to recommend cannabis for any patient the doctor believes could benefit. The limited condition list has kept the patient rolls in Washington, D.C. at just around 400. In March, the City Council approved marijuana decriminalization, where possession of an ounce is subject to only a $25 fine. Activists are currently working to place legalization with home grow on the November ballot. Polls show 2-to-1 support for legalization among D.C. voters.
Wow, this would really open up Washington, D.C.'s medical marijuana law to about the same level of what California is at. It's got that similar language of any condition a doctor believes cannabis can help. And really, when you think about it, shouldn't that be the way a medical marijuana law is? Have you ever heard of off-label prescribing? This is where a doctor has the freedom to take a drug that's been approved by the FDA for a condition X and go ahead and recommend it for condition Y, Z, PDQ, ABC, whatever he chooses, right? This happens all the time, these off-label prescribings. And if we can accept this for other controlled substances, why can't we accept this for a non-toxic herb? Why would we want to restrict doctors to only giving it to the most seriously ill people as a medicine of last resort when it can be the medicine of first resort for the treatment and prevention of so many illnesses out there?
Governor Andrew Cuomo is warning that medical marijuana could be, quote, a major negative for New York. Speaking at an event in upstate New York, Governor Cuomo called marijuana a gateway drug to other illegal substances and expressed worries about the, quote, entire system for marijuana growing, production, distribution, and sales. Governor Cuomo added, quote, if you don't put in the correct system, you could have a serious problem on your hands, end quote. The medical marijuana bill was transferred out of the Senate Finance Committee over the objections of the chairman and could get a Senate vote before the end of the session next Thursday.
Oh, Governor Cuomo, the 20th century called it once it's reefer madness back. Jeez. Okay, gateway drug, really? Really, Governor Cuomo, you're going to stand by gateway drugs, something that's been disproved as going back to the Institutes of Medicine 1999 report that said there is no causality between the use of marijuana and the subsequent use of other drugs. The fact is, Governor Cuomo, that people use drugs in a certain progression. Usually starts with caffeine and works its way up to nicotine or alcohol, and then maybe marijuana, and then maybe mushrooms, and then maybe cocaine. There's a progression to these things, but that doesn't mean that everybody follows that same progression. Just as every Hell's Angel biker out there started on a tricycle, it doesn't mean buying your kid a tricycle is going to turn him into a Hell's Angel. This is the biggest flaw in logic that he's got going here, this gateway drug. And if that's where he's going to base his opinion on medical marijuana and whether or not this entire system could be a serious problem, then the system is going to start off so severely handicapped, it's not really going to serve the patients it's meant to serve. And once again, we see this continuing trek into the box canyon of medical marijuana where every effort has to be made to make sure that the healthy people don't get any, make sure that nobody's growing it who doesn't deserve it, and all that does is continue to hurt patients. It's time to legalize because legalization is the only thing that protects all patients.
That's right, damn straight.
Oh, I love it when the school bell rings on a Friday. It's
That's
4:20
right.
in Denver, so Priscilla Seibin has an important safety meeting to make it to. Hope you have fun this weekend, Silly.
Yep, soak it up, mountain time.
All right, we'll be right back. Going behind the headlines on the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. What about the children, indeed? You're listening to the Russ Belville Show on 420radio.org.
420 Radio. Tune in, turn on, get highly educated. Adam Hand of Handmade Apparel produces quality custom designs for t-shirts, hats, and other apparel. Handmade Apparel is the official design shop for 420 Radio among many clients who rely on Adam Hand for everything from short-run custom projects to full-run clothing lines. Visit handmadeapparel.biz to browse the selection of handmade gear or to get a personal quote for your own designs. Handmade Apparel, a proud supporter of 420. Growing plants indoors can be a rewarding hobby, but electricity bills can go through the roof. Then you have to cool down all those big hot lights. It can drive a grower insane. With Lush LED lighting, you can solve many of these issues and double your rewards. Matt and his scientists have developed the perfect light for flowering plants with far less cost and heat. And the results? Very effective. Check out LushLEDlighting.com right now and tell them Radical Russ sent you.
All right, folks, time for us to go behind the headlines, 22 and a half after the hour, and we've gotten the latest release from the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. This is a survey that is done by the Centers for Disease Control. It takes a look at youth risk behaviors, basically. Not only drug, alcohol, and tobacco use, but fighting and, child abuse, how they're doing in school, and so forth. So there's a lot of information to be gleaned from this report. And it's been done every 2 years since the 90s. Not every state participates in it, but from the details that are available, the big headline out of the release today is that between the years of 2003 and 2013, no state has seen a rise in teen pot smoking. No state surveyed has seen a statistically significant rise in pot smoking, either lifetime pot use, whether or not they've tried marijuana, whether or not monthly marijuana use, and whether or not they tried pot before the age of 13. None of that has gone up since 2003 to 2013. And this is significant in that that is the time when medical marijuana was expanding throughout the country, and it was getting much more liberalized in the states that already had it. Kevin Sabet and his ilk like to point to 2009 as the year when Colorado really rolled out its marijuana marketplace as far as the medical marijuana goes. And all of this time, they've been saying that there's a message being sent here. If we liberalize medical marijuana, if we legalize marijuana for adults, it sends the wrong message to the teenagers, the wrong message to the kids, that for them, that marijuana use is okay, that there's nothing wrong with it. And guess what, folks? There is nothing wrong with it, but telling kids that message has not changed their behaviors. The first thing we find, lifetime marijuana use, we find that about 2 in 5 high schoolers have reported ever trying marijuana. The actual number is 40.7%. So 2 out of 5 kids have tried marijuana. But rates were higher than the national average in 7 states, with Arizona being the home to the most high schoolers who have tried pot, 43.3%. Not California, not Colorado, not Washington, Arizona. And the lowest rate was Utah, where 16.8% of high schoolers reported trying marijuana. 12 states had declines in the rate of kids who have tried marijuana, while 13 other states in the survey showed no difference over the past 10 years. In another measure, we took a look at how many kids are using marijuana regularly, currently, which is defined in the survey as using marijuana within the past 30 days. According to that, almost 1 in 4 students have toked within the month. The number is 23.4%, which breaks down to exactly 25% for boys and 21.9% for girls. The rates were highest in Delaware, Vermont, Connecticut, and New Mexico. New Mexico was the top at 27.8%. Rates were lowest in Kansas, Nebraska, and Utah, with just 7.6% of Utah high schoolers reporting marijuana smoking in the past 30 days. And again, for that statistic, 9 states saw a significant decline since 2003 in their rates of current teen pot smoking. In 21 other states, there was no statistical difference. That's right, it went down in 9 states and stayed the same in 21 others. Again, not all states are represented in this data. And finally, the last bit here is those who have tried marijuana before the age of 13, really young tokers, pre-teen tokers. What we find there is about 1 in 12 have toked before the age of 13. We have 1 in 12 high school students are pre-teen tokers. They started early. And New Mexico's got the highest rate of that at 17.3%. The rates were below 1 in 20 in Utah and Idaho. And once again, that pre-teen pot smoking rate declined in 15 states from 2003 to 2013 and saw no statistical difference in 13 other states. So this message of what about the children and whether or not we are sending the right message to the children by legalizing marijuana use for adults is not borne out by the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. In fact, fewer kids seem to be trying, starting, and using marijuana than the decade before. Now, in other news from the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, we find that teen smoking and drinking rates continue to plunge, in a decade going from 50% of kids who drank to just over 36%, and in a decade going from just over 37% of kids who smoked to now half that rate, about 17%. And we didn't have to arrest a single adult to make it happen. It seems kids are better at picking up messages, the right messages, than anyone thought. We're back with Chad West on Search and Seizure from the Texas Regional Normal Conference right after this.
You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
420 Radio, the world's voice of marijuana legalization. Wood Pipe Smoke Shop and Speakeasy is your source for cannabis community gear in southern Wisconsin. Owners Brian and Tammy Wood are located in Kendall, just outside of Madison, and they've got everything for the smoking enthusiast. They're open noon to 8 p.m. Monday through Saturday and can help you with your detoxification therapies as well. Call 608-466-7473 or email woodpipes@yahoo.com for more information. 420radio.org presents Electric Bob's Boogaloo with Electric Bob from Scottsdale, Arizona. Electric Bob expands the Russ Belville Show's Electric Tuesday into a full show featuring the best in electronic dance music and experimental music. New every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Pacific with replays Tuesday at 5 and 8 Pacific on 420radio.org. Cannabis Outreach Collective is an alternative health and wellness option located in Gladstone, Oregon, that serves patients in the Portland area and beyond. You can find out more about Cannabis Outreach Collective on Facebook at COC503 or by emailing cannabisoutreachcollective503@gmail.com or by telephone at 503-853-1319.
In the marijuana law reform movement, the cannabis community is represented by thousands of dedicated defense attorneys fighting to end prohibition and keep us free. The Russ Belville Show visits with the tireless courtroom crusaders in our legalization, law, and order.
But today I wanted to just talk to you briefly about search and seizure issues. Now you guys I feel like this is like preaching to the choir here, because you all probably know as much as I do about searches and seizures. You all are a very educated crowd. But I get a lot of normal people who call me and who don't really know Texas laws on searches and seizures. And there's a lot of misconceptions out there. So while this may be elementary to some of you guys, I just want to go through the rules just so you understand them and so you know what's going on in Texas. And then we're going to talk about cars. We're going to talk about searches and seizures related to your house. And we're going to talk about some new laws that are coming out with searches and seizures of cell phones, and what information you may keep in your cell phones and how that can lead to additional arrests and charges against you. So getting started here, I'm going to talk about some standards of proof, and it's a lot of legalese. If you've ever been involved with the law before, you've probably heard some of these, but let's just briefly cover them. This is a percentage of proof that an officer or a jury has to have in a certain situation. So most of you have heard of beyond a reasonable doubt. Beyond a reasonable doubt is the hardest burden of proof that must be had to get you convicted. Basically, a jury must believe you're guilty beyond a reasonable doubt before they can convict you of an offense. It's not 100%. Texas refuses to put an exact percentage on what beyond a reasonable doubt means, but I will tell you that generally most lawyers think it's around 99% or so of certainty that you're guilty of an offense before they can convict you. So it's a really hard burden to meet in the state of Texas. Coming on down the line, I'm not going to talk about clear and convincing and preponderance, but they're somewhere in the middle, 50 to 75% or so. What we're going to talk about today is reasonable suspicion and probable cause, because that's what you hear the most of. Reasonable suspicion is the easiest burden of proof that the officers have to have. Again, there's no percentage, but 10 to 20%-ish of certainty that you've done something wrong for an officer in the state of Texas to either detain you or to ask you questions or to do something else. Probable cause is a little higher than that. It's closer to 25-30%, and usually you have to have probable cause to be arrested. So again, 20 to 30% likelihood certainty that you've done something wrong or you've done something the officer thinks that you've done to meet that burden of proof. So it's not a lot. It's not a lot. But once you are detained or arrested, for a jury to convict you, it's a lot higher burden of proof. But this is what we're going to talk about today. So, starting off with cars. When can the police pull you over? This is our low burden of proof, reasonable suspicion. And situations where you're speeding, of course, and everybody knows that, you're speeding. If you are a minor traffic violation, like you run a stop sign, you kind of blow through a stop sign real slowly. If your inspection sticker, registration stickers are expired, of course, they can pull you over for that, go up to you in your car and talk to you. Can they order you out of your car? A lot of people get this wrong. Yes, they can. They can absolutely order you out of your car in any situation under the guise of officer safety. So even if you're just being pulled over for speeding, even if they haven't told you they smell marijuana, they can still ask you to get out of their car. Now, that doesn't mean they can search your car, but they can still ask you to get out of your car. Can they pat you down? Not always. The officers, again, must have reasonable suspicion that you have a weapon on you. Now, this isn't drugs, it's a weapon. And so, there's a lot of different case law in Texas that have come out over the years. A bulge in your pocket, is that enough to give officers reasonable suspicion? It can be if there's other circumstances, like you acting a little nervous, okay? If you have marijuana in your pocket, you're probably going to act, unless you're super cool, calm, and collected, you're going to probably act a little bit nervous. That alone is enough to give the officers reasonable suspicion to pat you down. So just keep that in mind. What if they ask to search your car? The ask must be clear. All right. I think the percentage is like 72% of all searches of cars in Texas are consented to. Now, you guys are above the curve here. You're smart enough to not consent if you've got marijuana in your car. But a lot of people don't realize that. They think that if an officer asks to search their car, they have to let them. Officers will sometimes, and we see this all the time in cases, they'll say things like, you mind if I take a look around? And that's not a clear ask, right? That's just sort of like a, kind of a suggestion. But a lot of people don't realize that officer is asking to search my car. So what you should do is, if you're not sure if the officer is asking to search or not, you tell the officer, listen, are you asking me to search my car? And then make them say, yes, I'm asking to search your car. Then you can say no. Yeah, 72% of pre-arrest searches in Texas are based on consent. And you absolutely do have the right to refuse. Now, what if the officer says, hey, driver, I smell marijuana. I want to search your car. At that point, you're in Texas, you're pretty much screwed. They're going to be able to search your car, and most conservative Texas judges, most judges in general in Texas, are going to uphold that search based on smell of marijuana alone. How long can an officer hold me? Now, this one gets a little trickier for the officers, because if the officer's waiting around, let's say they're even looking for a search, trying to get a search warrant. But if you've been sitting there for a couple of hours along the side of the road, and the officer still hasn't done anything, maybe he's waiting for backup, what have you, depends on how long you wait. But there are situations under Texas law where there have been illegal arrests and detentions because you've been held too long. So what you should do is if you are being held and held and held and held and held, the officer hasn't told you you're under arrest, you're just sitting there, you ask the officer, officer, am I under arrest or am I free to go? At that point, it triggers the officer, I've got a smart driver here, I've got a person who knows the law here, this person may file charges against me, file a civil claim against me for false arrest if I don't get this process moving. So ask the officer, am I under arrest or am I free to go? And again, there's no real time frame, but if it's been a couple of hours, it's very reasonable for you to ask that. Really just an hour in my opinion. Again, without probable cause, so reasonable suspicion, they've stopped you, okay? But they don't have probable cause yet, it hasn't reached that next level, they can only hold you for so long. And again, I just said it. So now we're going to talk about, briefly, searches and seizures of your homes. Now, when can the police enter my home? If they have a search warrant, of course they can absolutely come in to search your home. So the officers already had probable cause, they've already sought a search warrant, they've come to your door, they've knocked on your door, they say, hey, homeowner, I've got a search warrant, you got to let them in. If they have an arrest warrant, if you are harboring someone in your house, or if you are a person who has a warrant out for your arrest, they can absolutely come in to your house, whether or not you want them to or not. Now, what about the situation where I think one of our other speakers said they're walking around an apartment complex, they're going to the guy across from you, and they smell marijuana coming from your window or your door, okay? They cannot come into your home without a search warrant unless there's another circumstance alongside the smell of marijuana. So they smell marijuana, they knock on your door, you greet them, they say, I smell marijuana, okay? They can't just come in unless there's another circumstance. What they have to do at that point is they have to seek a search warrant to go into your house. At that point, you call your lawyer, for sure. So what are some exigent circumstances that are going on here? Furtive movements. We talked about that earlier, and that's really not defined in Texas, but it's like moving around, a lot of noise. You're not answering the door. That can be under Texas, because again, you're in a conservative state. That can be enough to justify the officers coming in without a warrant. A new case that's come out this last year, the presence of a child in a home is enough to allow an officer to come in. So if they smell marijuana plus a child in the home, that is enough for an officer to come in. Now this case was interesting. It was an actual case where the search of the home was not upheld. And what happened in that case is that a CPS had gone earlier to the home. CPS had met with the family, with the child, and CPS worker smelled marijuana. Okay, what the CBS worker did, they called the cops. When the cops got there, the kids were no longer in the home. The officers came up. The officers said, well, we're searching the home because we understand there's marijuana in here and there's kids in the house. At that time, there wasn't. And so it was, and of course they found the marijuana and they arrested the homeowners. That was not upheld because of the fact that the officers themselves did not see the kids and smell the marijuana. Now, this is the new hot topic with lawyers in the criminal defense world right now, is searches and seizures of cell phones. And why does this impact you guys? Well, our phones are our lives, right? You guys, if you have a smartphone, you keep your calendar in there. You probably keep, a lot of you have your bank account information in there. You may have medical, health-related things in there, notes, pictures of loved ones. I've read cases where there's people who have sexually explicit photos of a loved one in there, and photos of your family, and intimate details about our lives. Okay, so pretty much our phones are an extension of ourselves these days. And if you lose your phone, you know how dramatic that can be, right? So what happens when the police want to search through your cell phone? Because it's happening all over the place in Texas now. Right now, under the law, cell phones are considered containers. And this is nationwide. This isn't just Texas. But cell phones are considered containers. And just like any other container, a little box that you might keep something in, or a little bag, or a purse, or a briefcase, if you are arrested, or if officers feel they have probable cause to look through it, that there's something in there, they smell marijuana or what have you, if officers believe that there is something that will lead them to a crime, they can look through your cell phone. If you're pulled over, you got your phone on your lap, you're pulled over, but you're not arrested, the officers must have probable cause to look in your phone. Okay? So the officers must think, I've got a suspected drug dealer here. I saw him on the phone, and he was calling someone, and he threw his phone down when he got off. Maybe enough probable cause for them to look through your phone without a warrant. If they pull you over for speeding, and they just want to look at your phone, they can't do that without a warrant. If you're arrested in Texas, officers can look through your phone without a warrant. So in Texas, in most situations where it's more than just a basic traffic stop, the officers can look through your cell phone. Now, things are very likely going to change in the state of Texas and across the nation pretty soon. We've got 2 cases that have already gone before the United States Supreme Court, and both of these cases are, if either one of them is upheld, it's going to shake the foundation of officer searches of cell phones. Now, the U.S. v. Riley case was a California case. The defendant was pulled over for expired tags on his car. The officers decided to search through his cell phone without a warrant. So no warrant. They just said, all right, we pulled you over, you look a little shady, we're going to look through your cell phone and just see what's in there. They found pictures of him throwing gang signs in front of a car that had been shot up a week or 2 before, right? So because of those pictures they found in this guy's cell phone that they just happened to look at, they took that to a jury trial. The guy was convicted. So all that after a simple stop where the officers felt like there was something a little more to it. And by the way, they didn't have a warrant to look through the cell phone. So what does that mean for you? If you have pictures, let's say of you smoking with a buddy, and that picture, that buddy of yours is a known drug dealer, or somebody who has a warrant out against them. If there's a way they can tie you to a certain location and a certain person, the officers can use that evidence against you to seek conviction. So right now, until we get some new laws, be very careful what you keep on your cell phones. Pictures, text messages saying I'm going to be by to make a pickup soon. Things like that, emails even, can be looked through. Put you at a lot of risk right now. The Worry case is a little bit different facts. It's out of Massachusetts. where he was arrested for suspected drug dealing. So officers already had suspicion that this guy was dealing drugs. They searched his cell phone, they pulled it out, they looked through it. This was not a smartphone, it was just a little basic, one of the flip phones. Inside of that, they found an address that took them to a house of his, and they found all kinds of drugs and guns there. And he ended up getting convicted of 2 drugs and firearms counts, and at that point, all of the evidence that they found was based off of what was in that phone. So if the evidence in the phone was not valid, then that case could be thrown out. So what the arguments that the defense attorneys are making here is that there's so much information in cell phones, what I talked about earlier, your medical records, pictures of family, checking and savings accounts. There's so much information in those phones that it is much too intrusive for officers to be in your phones, looking at your phones. So that's the argument. It's like, how far can officers go? It's more than just looking in somebody's purse or a wallet or a briefcase or a little box. It's a lot more than that. And so we're going to see what the Supreme Court says. The end of June is when that is going to come down. So we're going to be looking for that very closely. Just to kind of summarize what I went over today, and again, this is probably basic for a lot of you, but I want to just make sure it's crystal clear. In Texas, the smell of marijuana, if you're in your car, means if the officer wants to search it, the search is probably going to be upheld. So keep that in mind. Homes, smell is not enough to justify a warrantless search. If they got a warrant, they could come in. But furtive movements or presence of children can justify the officers coming in your house. Smartphones, again, we just talked about that. So we'll look for that at the end of June, and I'm really excited to see what comes down there. My website's we'll have the latest on these cases that are coming down. Love to have you guys, keep up with me on Facebook and keep up with the law and what's happening. Thank you.
Chad West on search and seizure at the Texas Regional Normal Conference. It took place last weekend. I encourage you to check out normal.org and find your local Normal chapter. They are putting together stuff like this all the time. Meetings, information, website postings. You got to get informed and educated if you want to get it regulated. Activism starts with ACT. Act today. When we come back, another activist from DFW Normal, David Sloan, comes out of the cannabis closet when we return.
You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
You can get 420 Radio on the go with our Shoutcast stream for all internet-enabled media players. Go to rad-r.us/420shout or just click the Shoutcast icon below the live radio feed at 420radio.org. I'm Radical Russ Belville, and I want to thank you for listening to 420 Radio. We couldn't survive without you and our sponsors, and I'd like you to check out one of our prime sponsors, the National Cannabis Coalition. I've been working with NCC since June of 2012, and I'm proud to be part of the team they have assembled. National Cannabis Coalition is building the partnerships with reformers, lawmakers, and industry we need to be successful. Visit the National Cannabis Coalition website at nationalcannabiscoalition.com or the easier-to-remember ncc420.com. That's where you'll get the exclusive first look at my radical rants, as well as informative articles from the nation's top cannabis pundits. Visit ncc420.com today, and if you have your phone handy, text Russ to 420-420 to support NCC and 420 Radio. It's a free text message that helps us help you end adult marijuana prohibition. Learn more at ncc420.com, and thanks for supporting independent marijuana legalization public radio. In the interest of fair and balanced journalism, the Russ Belville Show presents the anti-drug public service announcement of the day.
Look, man, best dope you can buy. Try it.
I don't know. Hey,
Here comes Jessica and the Ghostbusters.
Hey, you guys want to try some dope?
No.
No!
Thanks, Trace. When it comes to the question of drugs, friends or not, the only right answer is no.
This has been the anti-drug public service announcement of the day. To cure this sort of reefer madness, listen to the Russ Belville Show every weekday on 420radio.org. New Approach Oregon is a coalition of Oregon citizens who believe that treating marijuana use as a crime has failed, costing taxpayers millions in law enforcement resources. Our approach will regulate, tax, and legalize marijuana for adults in Oregon. We can move Oregon forward and create new revenue for critical services. Visit our website at newapproachoregon.com or our page on Facebook at New Approach Oregon. Thank you.
Handle the truth.
Entirely legitimate topic for debate.
You have offended my family.
Hey, this is great, man.
And you have offended a Shaolin temple.
One major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
I know nothing.
I support a change in law to end federal criminal penalties for possession of up to 1 ounce of marijuana.
We don't need no stinking budget.
Homosexuality, immorality in general.
Down the centuries, you have slurred the meaning of the words, we, the people.
Be warned, this is not your mother's marijuana.
You could ask yourself a question. Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?
I want to ask you a bunch of questions. I want to have them answered immediately.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Radical Rant. All right, folks, going to turn over my rant time today to David Sloan, one of the attorneys who is sponsor of DFW Normal, specifically sponsor of the Truth Enforcement Vehicle, that fabulous Ford Crown Victoria made up to look like a cop car with green lights and 420 information on it. David gave a nice little speech at the conference in Fort Worth. Here it is.
The most active cannabis criminal defense lawyer in north central Texas. I think I'm going as far south as Bryan and College Station over toward Brenham, and then kind of Jamie Spencer's kind of picking up, coming out of Austin there. And then I'm going all the way north in the federal system over in the Eastern District of Texas and the Northern District of Texas and the Western District of Texas, and I'm going all the way up 287 and up into the Caprock and as far as Dalhart and Dumas. And folks, I'm tired. Where's Kelsey? She'll tell you. She used to work for me. So a 3-county day for me is nothing. 6 counties is often. So I leave early in the morning, get back late at night, and law enforcement's alive and well. They're kicking butt and taking names, especially in the areas of extracts and concentrates and things like that. They didn't know it when they saw it 3 months ago. Now they get an erection when they hear the word. These cases were high profile, where youth is facing life in prison for a pan of brownies and all that, and people were getting all excited. Folks, I got to tell you, I got 20 of those. But the good news is, over on the activism side, we're kicking ass and taking names. We've got those people scared that are opposed to us. And you know why?
They should be.
Well, you know why? Honestly, because they know they've lost the ear of the public. They've lost the trust of the public. People are turning to us now, and we are on the brink of a revolution in this state, and it's going to happen. I think we're going to start seeing some incremental, and then the floodgate's going to come on, and we're going to see some huge changes here in Texas, and I believe that, and I think we all have to believe that, or why are we here? But what you need to do, what I still do every day, Sean I know does it, keep the discussion going. You know, and don't go up and talk to people that you know are going to agree with you. What's that? You know, I used to see early in the day when we started doing this, and we didn't know what the hell we were doing. We'd get banners or little flyers made with the $12 budget we had, and we'd pass them out to every stoner we knew. You know, what the hell did that accomplish? You know? We had to learn that we don't need to be talking to our own, we need to be talking to them. And we've gotten some legislative stuff going and some workshops, and how to go talk to elected representatives and everything. Folks, we got our work cut out for us. You need to be sending letters. You need to be trying to schedule appointments. And you need to be going in and letting these people know that you're their constituents. And more importantly, vote. Those people buy lists. They've got 4 different lists in their right-hand desk drawer that they pull out. As soon as it got you on the phone, they're looking to see what you did last election, whether you voted or not. Go talk to these people. We've got to keep the pressure on right now. And if you'll do that, and not just in with the elected officials, but understand that ultimately your brothers and sisters and people that you meet on the street, that's your constituency. They're us too. Just something simply as wearing a normal shirt out to morning coffee will get 2 or 3 good conversations started with people that you would have never picked in that room and said they smoked weed. Right?
Yes. Right.
You know, talk to your Aunt Em, your grandma, your people that we need to sell these people, because you know right now everybody nearly has a receptive ear. And so that's what we need to do is we know what our attitude is. We need to constantly work to change public attitude. Not in an abrasive, offensive manner, but we need to constantly, especially elected officials, but everybody, they need to constantly feel our hand in the small of their back. You know, how you do. Nice turnout today, isn't it, sir? And that's what we're doing. Texas, it's in our grasp here. It is about to happen. And, you know, I'm so glad that there's so many people that are willing to come out of the closet. How am I doing on time? Coming out of the closet, that's a dicey subject for me. I'm a lawyer. And we're not allowed to break law, nor knowingly break law, nor encourage anyone else to do it. You know? And so, not necessarily me, but I'm sure there's lawyers that are in the closet. Been a lot of people I know been in there with him. You know? I'll close it with this, since there's been some changes in the law and stuff. It's time for me to come out. In jurisdictions where it's legal, I smoke pot and I like it a lot.
That's David Sloan coming out of the closet there as a marijuana consumer in jurisdictions where it is legal. Colorado and Washington State. But hey, every little bit counts, and we need everybody to come out of the closet as best they can and show that we are not to be feared. We are a peaceful, wonderful, law-abiding people, and we just want to have equal rights with beer drinkers. That's all we're looking for here. Thanks for joining us here for Hour 1. Stay tuned for Hour 2, Toker Talk Radio, where we've got more coverage of the Texas Regional Normal Conference. We're going to wind things up with my presentation of the 420 radio drug test, our Jeopardy game, if you will, that we played at Dallas-Fort Worth Normal. Had a really good time. Mike Hyde of the Cash Hyde Foundation was one of the captains. Tristan Tucker from DFW Normal, one of the other captains. And also stay tuned later tonight, 8 p.m. Pacific time, for another live edition of the Herb Thrasher Flower Hour. Herb Thrasher will be in here with us, bringing us the latest in great metal music. For Priscilla Simon, I'm Radical Russ. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, take care of each other, Tokers.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at RadicalRuss.com.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it. it goes down smoother.